Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Nice to see everyone back again. I've got my coffee, which I've already halfway through. It's supposed to be full, but I started drinking it because this setup takes me about half an hour to sort out, and it is currently 8:13 in the morning because this is literally the only time I get to film any videos when my son's at nursery and the other one's asleep. So I need to be quick before he wakes up. So if you hear any babies in the background, you know why. And that just smoothly leads us into the topic of today's video, which is lessons I've learned in motherhood. And I really wanted to do this video for a very long time, but I thought I wasn't qualified enough. So I feel as though now I am, because I've got a 3-year-old and a nearly 1.5-year-old. And having a 3-year-old, which is the same length as a university degree, means I've got a degree in motherhood. So now I'm doing my master's. So I'm also going to talk about tips and things that I found really helpful that are also backed up by evidence and research. So hopefully this video will be useful. So let's get into it. I'm a mother, but it's not my only identity. This may seem a little bit controversial, but hear me out. Going back a little bit, I remember when I had my son, so when he was a newborn baby, I remember just being consumed by this baby and having to give my attention 24/7. That's not necessarily wrong, but as he grew up, I was noticing that I was still doing that, to the point where I was beginning to neglect myself, my hobbies, my friends, things that I like to do for myself. I think a lot of that has to do with mum guilt, because I remember when I was going back to work after my maternity leave, it was so hard for me. I was feeling so worried that I'm going to be leaving him and, I'm not going to look after him very well, and I just felt really guilty. But I think over these last few years, I've learned and rationalized that there's real importance in looking after ourselves and not neglecting the things that we were doing before we had children that were part of our identity, whether that's our work, whether that's the relationships that we have with our friends, hobbies that we were doing, things that we enjoyed pre-having babies basically, and still being able to do that and make time for it. The way I kind of justified it to myself was, if I'm able to do the things that I enjoy and not neglect it. So for example, going to the gym, that's one thing that I really enjoy, going for walks, listening to podcasts, things like that. Once I've done that, I almost always feel less stressed out, less overwhelmed, less challenged by things, and I'm more able to look after my children. So I think in a way, we mums sometimes feel as though we have to sacrifice ourselves to looking after our children, otherwise they're not going to become well-rounded children. But actually your children seeing that you're going to the gym, you're walking, you're indulging in your hobbies, reading, writing, whatever. So your children seeing that is actually a great thing. For me, it was learning about how to balance motherhood and self, as in myself. I've noticed that since I've kind of been reframing this mum guilt and making sure that I'm not losing my identity within motherhood, that I've made more effort to pursue new things. So this YouTube channel, for example, I started this when I was on maternity leave. I applied for a new university job, which I'm also doing. I'm working as well. So we can do a lot of things. We just have to tell ourselves that we can, and that we shouldn't neglect the things that we were doing before we became parents. And the next lesson, which is kind of similar, is having alone time. So whether that's going outside for a 10-minute walk around the block, whether that's having a nice indulgent bath, asking your other half to maybe look after your kids for a little bit and just have a bit of a lie down, anything like that, again, goes a very long way. And for me, having a bit of exercise in the day, or whether that's walking, which is probably easier than going to the gym, it reduces the emotional intensity of the day-to-day stresses when you have kids. When you have young kids, sanity is something that can easily go. So for me, that's just walking. And again, there's a lot of evidence that says even 10 minutes of walking makes us feel better. We have more clarity in our thoughts. The emotional intensity of our stress is reduced. We feel much more able to face difficult challenges. And that's just going for a 10-minute walk. And that doesn't include any other physical benefits. So going for walks, even for 10 minutes around the block, makes a very big different. The next lesson is, it's not what we say, but what we do that makes the biggest impact. Children, especially young children, learn the most when they're copying others. So they're modeling our behaviors. They're listening when we're gossiping about people. They're listening when we're talking ill of people. They're listening when we're speaking aggressively. They're listening when we're arguing. And they're watching us as well. You think they're not watching us, but they are watching us, copying our behavior. So I found it really, really important to watch what I'm saying in front of my children. So if, for example, there's a disagreement with my husband, we'll try and make sure we're not doing it in the same room. I'll try and not speak negatively, especially in front of them. That's really important, especially when they're young, because there is a critical stage in childhood, so between ages of 2 and 7, where their brain development is the most rapid and the most significant. So they're forming lots and lots of new learning experiences. Babies, children's brains at around that age have double the amount of connections compared to adults. So what they're taking in terms of new behaviors that they're learning and new languages that they're learning really, really has a massive impact on their future, as into their adulthood. The way in which we can promote and teach our children positive experiences and positive behaviours is by actually doing it ourselves. And that's the most effective way. Next lesson is routine. Have I said that loud enough? Without having a day-to-day routine in our house, I think we would just, I can't even imagine. Children to have a day-to-day routine is super, super important. Not to make them organized and to keep your sanity, but actually a lot of research has shown in child psychology that children who have a routine in their day are more likely to feel safe. They'll feel more secure. That consistency in the day gives them a sense of comfort as well and predictability. And that has a massive impact also on their development. An example is in our house, I really, really try and keep routine. So one of them, which is a bedtime routine. So my kids know when bedtime is coming, an hour before bed, there's no TV. We dim the lights, we don't play any games that are very stimulating. We read, so they'll get the books out and then we'll just read. It's just very calming. So then obviously they go upstairs, brush their teeth, whatever, and then go to sleep. Kids know, so in that hour before they go to bed, they already subconsciously know the next thing that is going to come after this is bed. So they're less likely to throw tantrums and act out, not always but often, because they know, okay, this is a routine that we're going to go into. And my 3-year-old, when he sees the television being switched off and we're all kind of like, the lights have just been darkened a little bit, he goes into the cupboard and gets his books out and to be read to. Same for my 1-year-old, he knows it as well. So routines also gives kids clear boundaries in terms of their behaviours, and also gives them a sense of independence because already kind of participating in the routine by not having to be prompted. So when he gets his book out of the cupboard, for example. The next lesson is don't be afraid to share the workload or ask for help. I feel as though as women we have this sense of obligation to be able to do everything without burning out and still being put together and looking like we've got everything in order. And we have this really bad, well, I do anyway, bad sense where if I'm asking for help, it means that I'm weak or I'm not able to fulfill my motherly duties, or asking for help is a necessity. If you've got the privilege of having family around or friends or things like that, then really make the most of help that is offered, but also being able to ask for help. The same goes for involving the husbands as much as possible. So being able to share the workload when it comes to kids is a two-man job. It's not just mums that have to have the full responsibility. So I think asking for help is absolutely important. Next lesson is striving for perfection will cost you. Let's get it out there. There's no such thing as a perfect mum. Let's get that out there. We're all learning. I see motherhood as like a on-the-job training. So you're doing the job without really having much training, but you're kind of learning along the way. So we're going to be making mistakes. We're going to have bad days. I certainly have had loads of them. Being able to accept and not feel guilty about maybe not prioritizing doing the dishes, but actually having some quality time with the children. Or maybe if the routine hasn't worked out, for example, the kids have gone out or something, you've gone to the library, you've packed everything, and then I don't know, you forgot the wipes and they've got food all over them or something. That does not mean you're a bad mum. It just means that things happen and kids are messy and kids can throw havoc into our routine. So I think learning to be flexible with the day being flexible with myself, being flexible with the children really went a long way. I think if you're constantly trying to keep everything perfect, it's gonna be a lot of effort. And when it doesn't work out and you're aiming for 100%, you only got 99%, you're going to feel dissatisfied. So I think just aiming to be good in that day and improving for the following day is probably a much healthier way of looking at it. And the next lesson is having quality time with the children. I think it's easy to see that the day's already ended once we've done the dishes, we've cleaned, we've dressed them, we've made dinner, we've fed them, and then by the time all of that is done, we're too tired and we go to sleep, and then we start the next day, and then we actually forget what I would argue is the easiest bit about being a parent, and that is just having no pressure quality time with our children and just cuddling them, playing with them, sitting with them, listening to them. And again, a lot of evidence shows parents who are very engaged with the children, especially at a very young age, whether that's reading to them or playing with them or just hugging and cuddling or anything like that, are more well adjusted. The kids are more well adjusted, and they're less likely to become anxious or worried or depressed or anything like that in the future when they're an adult. And also helps us as well, you know, hugging and physical affection with children releases hormones, feel-good hormones in our brains that makes us feel better. So just making a little bit of time with the kids is really it's also nice. It's very nice. The last lesson, by no means the least, is what I like to call the 2-minute pause. This 2-minute pause has saved me from pulling my hair out. There are going to be occasions, probably not occasions actually, more than a few occasions, something frequently. So when the kids are just, you know, very challenging, there's challenging behaviours, someone's dropped the bowl of porridge and it's all over the floor now, and you're trying to get them into the car, and the car's and then you just get really overwhelmed and you're this close from like screaming. Pause. Honestly, this is what I do now, and just pause and just stop what I'm doing, take some deep breaths in, count to 10, in through my nose and out through my mouth, and literally just doing that for 2 minutes. Sometimes I don't even have time to do it for 2 minutes, I may have to do it for 1 minute. Anyway, the principle still stands. It's just to stop, and that goes a really long way. And I actually compare it to driving a car. If you're driving a car on the highway and it begins to overheat, what do? You stop, you switch the engine off and let the car cool down. Stopping just stops us from getting to a point where we start saying things or doing things that we're going to regret. And also stopping helps us just clarify our thoughts, just take a breather and be able to carry on. I think that in the long run really has a positive impact on our stress levels, because that 2-minute pause is borrowing from the concept of mindfulness, which is something that I as a GP always encourage my patients to do when there are elements of things like depression and anxiety and high stress levels or anything like that. So, okay, I've rambled on for long enough and my coffee's gone cold. But I hope that was useful. As always, please let me know if you found any of this helpful. Please let me know what sort of things that you've learned being a mum. I'd love to know, because I'm always learning. I'm always wanting to know more. Anyway, so as always, if you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.